Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. In the Canterbury Tales, a group of pilgrims traveling to Canterbury Cathedral compete in a storytelling contest. This overarching plot or theme provides a reason for the pilgrims to tell their stories, which reflect the concerns sparked by the social upheavals of late medieval England. The general prologue sets the scene for this societal tension by introducing a wide variety of pilgrims from across different social classes. When the host suggests the storytelling contest and claims the best storyteller will win a free tavern meal, he incites the plot because this contest both creates a reason for the pilgrims to tell stories and also places the pilgrims in competition with each other. The knight, who speaks first in accordance with his rank, roots his tale firmly in rigid courtly sensibilities. However, the miller insists on going next, disrupting the hierarchy. His bawdy tale that celebrates adultery contrasts sharply with the courtly love of the knight's tale. The rave follows in response to a slight in the miller's tale, emphasizing that a social class no longer plays any role in determining the order of the tales. The subsequent tales often respond to each other thematically, creating dialogues about social concerns in the Middle Ages. Several tales depict tension around the changing roles of women, particularly in regard to marriage. The Wife of Bath's tale ignites this conflict using courtly romance to subvert courtly norms and arguing for female independence. The Clerk's tale aims to refute the wife's story, asserting that marriage is happiest when the wife is obedient. The Franklin promotes a middle ground. He describes a devoted young couple who share power in their marriage. Other tales in this middle section examine tensions around the role of the church in public life, particularly given the institution's prevalent corruption. The friar tells a story about a corrupt summoner, while the summoner describes a friar who, seeking to cheat parishioners of their money, is himself cheated. Their tales introduce the theme of corrupt church officials abusing their positions for financial gain, while also illustrating the rivalries among different religious professions. The repeated hypocrisy demonstrated by most of the higher-ranking clerical characters brings up questions about the sincerity of church officials and their prominent roles in the community. Ultimately, the Canterbury Tales concludes with no real resolution to the multiple conflicts it raises and with no conclusion to the storytelling contest. The final tale is told by the parson, a generous and honest religious leader who, in lieu of a story, preaches repentance to the pilgrims, wanting them to remain in good standing with God. Following the pardoner's tale, Chaucer includes several paragraphs apologizing if his readers did not like parts of the Canterbury Tales and retracting any sexual or violent content that offended rigid church morality. Because Chaucer maintains a wry tone throughout, it's difficult to tell whether Chaucer means for the parson's tale and his own subsequent retraction to be received sincerely or as a satire of religious performances. Nevertheless, the fact that the Canterbury Tales ends with a call for individual repentance of wrongdoing suggests that there is no collective resolution for the conflicts introduced throughout the tales. Rather, as Chaucer writes his own retraction, so people are individually responsible for navigating the tensions among class, gender, and religion, ultimately determining their own courses of action. The Knight's Tale, Part 1 to 4. Part 1. Long ago in ancient Greece, a great conqueror and duke named Theseus ruled the city of Athens. One day, 4 women kneel in front of Theseus' horse and weep, halting his passage into the city. The eldest woman informs him that they are grieving the loss of their husbands, who were killed at the siege of the city of Thebes. Creon, the lord of Thebes, has dishonored them by refusing to bury or cremate their bodies. Enraged at the lady's plight, Theseus marches on Thebes, which he easily conquers. After returning the bones of their husbands to the four women for the funeral rites, Theseus discovers two wounded enemy soldiers lying on the battlefield nearing death. Rather than kill them, he mercifully heals the Theban soldiers' injuries, but condemns them to a life of imprisonment in an Athenian tower. The prisoners named Palamon and Arcite are cousins and sworn brothers. Both live in the prison tower for several years. One spring morning, Palamon awakes early, looks out the window and sees fair-haired Emilie, Theseus' sister-in-law. She is making flower garlands to do honor to May. He falls in love and mourns with heartache. His cry awakens Arcite, who comes to investigate the matter. As Arcite peers out the window, he too falls in love with the beautiful flower-clad maiden. They argue over her, but eventually realize the futility of such a struggle when neither can ever leave the prison. One day, a duke named Perothus, friend both to Theseus and Arcite, petitions for Arcite's freedom. Theseus agrees, on the condition that Arcite be banished permanently from Athens on pain of death. Arcite returns to Thebes, miserable and jealous of Palamon, who can still see Emilie every day from the tower. But Palamon too grows more sorrowful than ever. He believes that Arcite will lay siege to Athens and take Emilie by force. Part 2. Sometime later, winged Mercury, messenger to the gods, appears to Arcite in a dream and urges him to return to Athens. By this time, Arcite has grown gaunt and frail from love sickness. He realizes that he could enter the city disguised and not be recognized. He does so and takes on a job as a page in Emilia's chamber under the pseudonym Philostrate. This puts him close to Emilie but not close enough. Wandering in the woods one spring day, he fashions garlands of leaves and laments the conflict in his heart, his desire to return to Thebes and his need to be near his beloved. As it happens, Palamon has escaped from 7 years of imprisonment that very day and hears Arcite's song and monologue while sneaking through the woods. They confront each other, each claiming the right to Emilie. Arcite challenges his old friend to a duel the next day. They meet in a field and bludgeon each other ruthlessly. Theseus, out on a hunt, finds these two warriors brutally hacking away at each other. Palamon reveals their identities and love for Emilie. He implores the Duke to justly decide their fate, suggesting that they both deserve to die. Theseus is about to respond by killing them, but the women of his court, especially his queen and Emilie, intervene, pleading for Palamon and Arcite's lives. The Duke consents and decides instead to hold a tournament 50 weeks from that day. The two men will be pitted against one another, each with 100 of the finest men he can gather. The winner will be awarded Emilia's hand. Part 3. Theseus prepares for the tournament by constructing an enormous stadium. By its gate, he erects 3 temples to the gods, one for Venus, the goddess of love, one for Mars, the god of war, and one for Diana, the goddess of chastity. The knight provides a lengthy description of each temple. The tournament nears, spectators assemble, and both Palamon and Arcite arrive with impressive armies. The Sunday before the tournament, Palamon visits the temple of Venus and supplicates her in the night. He tells her of his desire for Emilie and requests that she bring him victory in the name of love. The statue of Venus makes an enigmatic sign. The reader isn't told what the sign is, which Palamon interprets as a positive answer, and he departs confident. That at dawn, Emilie also rises and goes to the temple of Diana. Desirous to remain a virgin, a maiden all my life, she begs Diana to prevent the impending marriage, but an image of Diana appears and informs her that she must marry one of the Thebans. Obedient, Emilie retires to her chamber. Arcite walks to the temple of Mars and begs the god of war for victory in the battle. He too receives a positive sign. The doors of the temple clang, and he hears the statue of Mars whisper, "Victory!" Like Palamon, Arcite departs the temple in high hopes for the coming day. The scene then shifts to the gods themselves. Saturn, Venus' father, assures her cryptically that despite Mars' aid to Arcite, Palamon will have his lady in the end. Part 4. After much feasting, the spectators assemble in the stadium. The magnificent armies enter, appearing evenly matched. After Theseus has sternly delivered the rules, the bloody battle of flashing swords and maces begins. Though Palamon fights valiantly, Arcite sees his chance and brings Palamon to the stake. He claims him with a sword at his throat. Emilie rejoices as Theseus proclaims Arcite victorious. Venus, on the other hand, weeps with shame that her knight lost, until Saturn calms her and signals that all is not over. At Saturn's request, the earth shakes beneath Arcite as he rides toward Theseus. The knight's horse throws him, crushing his chest. Gravely wounded, the company transports Arcite to bed, where physicians attempt in vain to heal him. Arcite expresses his love to Emilie, and then tells her that if she decides to marry another, she should remember Palamon, who possesses the qualities of a worthy knight. All of Athens mourns Arcite's death. Emilie, Theseus, and Palamon are inconsolable. Theseus' father, Aegeus, takes Theseus aside and tells him that every man just live and die. Life is a journey through woe that must at some point come to an end. After some years pass, the mourners heal, with the exception of Emilie and Palamon, who continue to go about sorrowfully, dressed in black. During one parliament at Athens, Theseus berates the two for grieving too much. He reminds them that God ordains that all must die, and refusal to accept death is therefore folly. He requests that they cease mourning and that his wife's sister take Palamon for her husband and lord. They obey, and as they realize the wisdom of Theseus' advice over many years, Emilie and Palamon enjoy a long, loving, and happy marriage. The Miller's Tale from Canterbury Tale. The miller begins his story. There was once an Oxford student named Nicholas, who studied astrology and was well acquainted with the art of love. Nicholas boarded with a wealthy but ignorant old carpenter named John, who was jealous and highly possessive of his sexy 18-year-old wife, Alison. One day, the carpenter leaves and Nicholas and Allison begin flirting. Nicholas grabs Allison and she threatens to cry for help. He then begins to cry and after a few sweet words, she agrees to sleep with him when it is safe to do so. She is worried that John will find out, but Nicholas is confident he can outwit the carpenter. Nicholas is not alone in desiring Allison. A merry, vain parish clerk named Absalom also fancies Allison. He serenades her every night, buys her gifts and gives her money, but to no avail. Allison loves Nicholas. Nicholas devises a plan that will allow him and Allison to spend an entire night together. He has Allison tell John that Nicholas is ill. John sends a servant to check on his brother, who arrives to find Nicholas immobile, staring at the ceiling. When the servant reports back to John, John is not surprised, saying that madness is what one gets for inquiring into Goddess' privacy, which is what he believes Nicholas' astronomy studies amount to. Nevertheless, he feels sorry for the student and goes to check on him. Nicholas tells John he has had a vision from God and offers to tell John about it. He explains that he has foreseen a terrible event. The next Monday, waters twice as great as Noah's flood will cover the land, exterminating all life. The carpenter believes him and fears for his wife, just what Nicholas had hoped would occur. Nicholas instructs John to fasten 3 tubs, each loaded with provisions and an axe, to the roof of the barn. On Monday night, they will sleep in the tubs, so that when the flood comes, they can release the tubs, hacked through the roof, and float until the water subsides. Nicholas also warns John that it is God's commandment that they may do nothing but pray once they are in the tubs. No one is to speak a word. Monday night arrives, and Nicholas, John, and Allison ascend by ladder into the hanging tubs. As soon as the carpenter begins to snore, Nicholas and Allison climb down, run back to the house, and sleep together in the carpenter's bed. In the early dawn, Absalom passes by, hoping to stop in for a kiss or perhaps more from Allison. Absalom sidles up to the window and calls to her. She hoarsely replies that she loves another. Absalom persists and Allison offers him one quick kiss in the dark. Absalom leaps forward eagerly, offering a lingering kiss, but it is not her lips he finds at the window but her naked arse. She and Nicholas collapse with laughter, while Absalom blindly tries to wipe his mouth. Determined to avenge Allison's prank, Absalom hurried back into town to the blacksmith and obtains a red-hot iron poker. He returns with it to the window and knocks again, asking for a kiss and promising Allison a golden ring. This time, Nicholas, having gotten up to relieve himself anyway, sticks his rear out the window and farts thunderously in Absalom's face. Absalom brands Nicholas' buttocks with the poker. Nicholas leaps up and cries out, "Help! Water! Water!" John, still hanging from the roof, wakes up and assumes Nicholas' cries meant that the flood has come. He grabs the axe, cuts free the tub, and comes crashing to the ground, breaking his arm. The noise and commotion attract many of the townspeople. The carpenter tells the story of the predicted flood, but Nicholas and Allison pretend ignorance, telling everyone that the carpenter is mad. The townspeople laugh that all have received their dues, and the miller merrily asks that God save the company. The Wife of Bath's Tale. In the days of King Arthur, the wife of Bath begins the Isle of Britain was full of fairies and elves. Now those creatures are gone because their spots have been taken by the friars and other mendicants that seem to fill every nook and cranny of the isle. And though the friars rape women just as the incubi did in the days of the fairies, the friars only cause women dishonor. The incubi always got them pregnant. In Arthur's court, however, a young lusty knight comes across a beautiful young maiden one day. Overcome by lust and his sense of his own power, he rapes her. The court is scandalized by the crime and decrees that the knight should be put to death by decapitation. However, Arthur's queen and other ladies of the court intercede on his behalf and ask the king to give him one more chance to save his own life. Arthur, wisely obedient to wifely counsel, grants their request. The queen presents the knight with the following challenge. If within 1 year he can discover what women want most in the world and report his findings back to the court, he will keep his life. If he cannot find the answer to the queen's question, or if his answer is wrong, he will lose his head. The knight sets forth in sorrow. He roams throughout the country, posing the question to every woman he meets. To the knight's dismay, nearly every one of them answers differently. Some claim that women love money best, some honor, some jolliness, and some looks, some sex, some remarriage, some flattery, and some say that women most want to be free to do as they wish. Finally, says the wife, some say that women most want to be considered discreet and secretive, although she argues that such an answer is clearly untrue, since no woman can keep a secret. As proof, she retells Ovid's story of Midas. Midas had 2 ears growing under his hair, which he concealed from everybody except his wife, whom he begged not to disclose his secret. She swore she would not, but the secret burned so much inside her that she ran down to a marsh and whispered her husband's secret to the water. The wife then says that if her listeners would like to hear how the tale ends, they should read Ovid. She returns to her story of the night. When his day of judgment draws near, the knight sorrowfully heads for home. As he rides near a forest, he sees a large group of women dancing and decides to approach them to ask his question. But as he approaches, the group vanishes and all he can see is an ugly old woman. The woman asks if she can be of help, and the knight explains his predicament and promises to reward her if she can help him. The woman tells the knight that he must pledge himself to her in return for her help, and the knight, having no options left, gladly consents. She then guarantees that his life will be saved. The knight and the old woman travel together to the court, where in front of a large audience, the knight tells the queen the answer with which the old woman supplied him. What women most desire is to be in charge of their husbands and lovers. The women agree resoundingly that this is the answer, and the queen spares the knight's life. The old hag comes forth and publicly asks the knight to marry her. The knight cries out in horror. He begs her to take his material possessions rather than his body, but she refuses to yield, and in the end he is forced to consent. The two are married in a small private wedding and go to bed together the same night. Throughout the entire ordeal, the knight remains miserable while in bed. The loathsome hag asks the knight why he is so sad. He replies that he could hardly bear the shame of having such an ugly, low-born wife. She does not take offense at the insult, but calmly asks him whether real gentleness or noble character can be hereditary. There have been sons of noble fathers, she argues, who were shameful and villainous, though they shared the same blood. Her family may be poor, but real poverty lies in covetousness, and real riches lie in having little and wanting nothing. She offers the knight a choice. Either he can have her be ugly but loyal and good, or he can have her young and fair but also coquettish and unfaithful. The knight ponders in silence. Finally, he replies that he would rather trust her judgment, and he asks her to choose whatever she thinks best. Because the knight's answer gave the woman what she most desired, the authority to choose for herself, she becomes both beautiful and good. The two have a long, happy marriage, and the woman becomes completely obedient to her husband. The wife of Bath concludes with a plea that Jesus Christ sent all women husbands who are young, meek, and fresh in bed, and the grace to outlive their husbands. From the Book of Canterbury Tale, The Tale of the Nuns Priest. A poor elderly widow lives a simple life in a cottage with her two daughters. Her few possessions include 3 sows, 3 cows, a sheep, and some chickens. One chicken, her rooster, is named Chanticleer, which in French means sings clearly. True to his name, Chanticleer's a cock, a doodle-doo, makes him the master of all roosters. He crows the hour more accurately than any church clock. His crest is redder than fine coral, his beak is black as jet, his nails whiter than lilies, and his feathers shine like burnished gold. Understandably, such an attractive cock would have to be the Don Juan of the barnyard. Chanticleer has many hen wives, but he loves most truly a hen named Pertelote. She is as lovely as Chanticleer is magnificent. As Chanticleer and Pertelote and all of Chanticleer's ancillary henwives are roosting one night, Chanticleer has a terrible nightmare about an orange hound-like beast who threatens to kill him while he is in the yard. Fearless, Pertelote berates him for letting a dream get the better of him. She believes the dream to be the result of some physical malady, and she promises him that she will find some purgative herbs. She urges him once more not to dread something as fleeting and illusory as a dream. In order to convince her that his dream was important, he tells the stories of men who dream of murder and then discovered it. His point in telling these stories is to prove to Pertelote that murder will out. Murder will reveal itself, even and especially in dreams. Chanticleer cites textual examples of famous dream interpretations to further support his thesis that dreams are portentous. He then praises Pertelote's beauty and grace, and the aroused hero and heroine make love in barnyard fashion. He feathered Pertelote 20 times, and trade higher X as ofte ere it was prime. He claps Pertelote with his wings 20 times, and copulates he with her as often before it was 6 a.m. One day in May, Chanticleer has just declared his perfect happiness when a wave of sadness passes over him. That very night, a hungry fox stalks Chanticleer and his wives, watching their every move. The next day, Chanticleer notices the fox while watching a butterfly, and the fox confronts him with dissimulating courtesy, telling the rooster not to be afraid. Chanticleer relishes the fox's flattery of his singing. He beats his wings with pride, stands on his toes, stretches his neck, closes his eyes, and crows loudly. The fox reaches out and grabs Chanticleer by the throat and then slinks away with him back toward the woods. No one is around to witness what has happened. Once Pertelote finds out what has happened, she burns her feathers with grief, and a great wail arises from the hen house. The widow and her daughters hear the screeching and spy the fox running away with the rooster. The dogs follow, and pretty soon the whole barnyard joins in the hula-baloo. Chanticleer very cleverly suggests that the fox turn and boost to his pursuers. The fox opens his mouth to do so, and Chanticleer flies out of the fox's mouth and into a high tree. The fox tries to flatter the bird into coming down, but Chanticleer has learned his lesson. He tells the fox that flattery will work for him no more. The moral of the story, concludes the Nuns priest, is never to trust a flatterer. From the story of Canterbury, The Pardoner's Tale. The Pardoner describes a group of young Flemish people who spend their time drinking and reveling, indulging in all forms of excess. After commenting on their lifestyle of debauchery, the Pardoner enters into a tirade against the vices that they practice. First and foremost is gluttony, which he identifies as the sin that first caused the fall of mankind in Eden. Next, he attacks drunkenness, which makes a man seem mad and witless. Next is gambling, the temptation that ruins men of power and wealth. Finally, he denounces swearing. He argues that it so offended God that he forbade swearing in the second commandment, placing it higher up on the list than homicide. After almost 200 lines of sermonizing, the pardoner finally returns to his story of the lecherous Flemish youngsters. As three of these rioters sit drinking, they hear a funeral knell. One of the revelers' servants tells the group that an old friend of theirs was slain that very night by a mysterious figure named Death. The rioters are outraged and, in their drunkenness, decide to find and kill Death to avenge their friend. Traveling down the road, they meet an old man who appears sorrowful. He says his sorrow stems from old age. He has been waiting for Death to come and take him for some time, and he has wandered all over the world. The youths, hearing the name of Death, demand to know where they can find him. The old man directs them into a grove, where he says he just left Death under an oak tree. The rioters rush to the tree, underneath which they find not Death but 8 bushels of gold coins with no owner in sight. At first they are speechless, but then the slayest of the three reminds them that if they carry the gold into town in daylight, they will be taken for thieves. They must transport the gold under cover of night, and so someone must run into town to fetch bread and wine in the meantime. They draw lots, and the youngest of the three loses and runs off toward town. As soon as he is gone, the slave plotter turns to his friend and divulges his plan. When their friend returns from town, they will kill him and therefore receive greater shares of the wealth. The second rioter agrees, and they prepare their trap. Back in town, the youngest vagrant is having similar thoughts. He could easily be the richest man in town. He realizes if he could have all the gold to himself. He goes to the apothecary and buys the strongest poison available, then puts the poison into 2 bottles of wine, leaving a third bottle pure for himself. He returns to the tree, but the other two rioters leap out and kill him. They sit down to drink their friend's wine and celebrate, but each happens to pick up a poisoned bottle. Within minutes they lie dead next to their friend. Thus concludes the pardoner, all must beware the sin of avarice, which can only bring treachery and death. He realizes that he has forgotten something. He has relics and pardons in his bag. According to his custom, he tells the pilgrims the value of his relics and asks for contribution. Even though he has just told them the relics are fake, he offers the host the first chance to come forth and kiss the relics, since the host is clearly the most enveloped in sin. The host is outraged and proposes to make a relic out of the pardoner's genitals, but the knight calms everybody down. The host and pardoner kiss and make up, and all have a good laugh as they continue on their way.